Hey everyone, it's Jade from Boho Bookworm. Got myself some lemsip today because I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. As it's nearing the end of April, I thought that I'd share with you my April wrap up because it's been a while since I've done one and I read some pretty amazing books this month. Sadly, I don't have the physical books to show you as usual lately because mainly the books I've been reading are all on Audible. I usually listen to audiobooks while I'm out on like my morning 5k runs or cooking dinner or doing the dishes or something like that. So the first book I listened to on Audible this month was Tell Me Lies by J.P. Pomare. Now this is an author I actually had the honour of meeting in person in Brisbane at a book signing event, and I actually had him on my podcast as well. I interviewed him about over a year ago now. He wrote a book called Call Me Evie, which was absolutely excellent, so I had to dive into his new book, which is an Audible original. So I think I mentioned in my previous video that I haven't actually been reading that many thrillers lately, so it felt really good to just get back into like the suspenseful kind of creepy book while I was out on my runs. And where I run is, by a graveyard and down this path called Coffin Path and stuff, so it felt super freaky to be listening to it while I was on those runs, like almost like a haunted English village type vibe. It was awesome. I'm a bit weird, I like to scare myself. But I think it was particularly weird because obviously the world is in lockdown at the moment with this COVID-19 stuff. So all the roads and pathways and stuff are just completely deserted. So it's just me and it's like eerily quiet, spooky by this graveyard and abandoned church building. I'm listening to this freaky ass book while I'm running. This book was narrated by a lady called Amy Horn, and I think she did such an excellent job of putting us into an Australian setting. So I'll get into the premise now, but I've listened to so many audiobooks lately, and I have to say that Tell Me Lies by J.P. Pomare is definitely one of the best that I've listened to possibly ever. So the book starts with our main character Margot, and she is pushing this man in front of an oncoming train, but what would drive her to do such a thing, to kill another person? Something must have forced her into doing that unless she's completely sadistic. I mean, there's witnesses everywhere, there's CCTV footage, so it's very clear that she did it. And we know that going in from the very first page of the book, but the question is, why? Then we get thrown back into the past, and it turns out, Margot is a psychologist and she's got a particular interest in sociopaths and narcissists. So in the early stages of the book, we're introduced to quite a couple of Margot's patients, and they've all got, their own little backstories and their problems. So one of her patients is this guy called Joe, who is a content moderator for social media, and he sees some pretty horrific things, like, decapitated heads and stuff like that, child pornography, hideous things that he's got to basically filter through to see which should and should not be allowed on the internet for the public to see. There's also a young girl who likes to self-harm herself, and then there's Cormac, who is this Irish guy. Now Cormac's got like these major daddy issues and he loves pushing Margot's buttons. All of these patients, and Margot as well, that they're all such fleshed out characters and they felt so real, which is what made this book really special. And with some of her patients, she's developed a much deeper connection with them, and professional protocols aren't being abided by, shall we say. So then the story goes on, and it seems like Margot might have some kind of an anxiety thing. She feels like she's being followed home, and the night that she felt like she was being followed home, her house gets set alight, and it turns out it's definitely arson. Shortly after she escapes from the fire, she finds this photograph outside of the house, which is like a decapitated body, and so she instantly thinks, well, why would Joe want to do this to me? Could it be him? He would have easy access to images like that. So all the attacks carry on going on because suddenly her office is also set on fire, and obviously someone is targeting her. This book is just so addictive, fast-paced, unpredictable, tension-packed, and honestly really unique. I was blown away. With thriller books, a lot of the time you kind of get the twist or figure it out before it happens, but with this one I had no idea where it was going, and I was just absolutely like jaw on the floor with the twist that happened. It was phenomenal. This book got a 5 out of 5 stars from me, obviously. I do have to say though, I feel like maybe a lot of readers might find Margot's character quite annoying, and maybe that would make you dislike the book a little bit, because to be fair, she is a character that you want to throttle. She's made quite a lot of bad decisions in her life and gotten herself into really awkward situations. There's no professionalism with her, and her inner dialogue she has throughout the book just really irked me. Basically, she's the typical character that you love to hate. I mean, so this book, the psychopath gets referred to as Ted Bundy. You know, he's got this great charisma, super good looking. Just the whole book is littered with red herrings that just throws you in all sorts of directions, and I thought it was so well done. I highly recommend it. Quite a statement, but Tell Me Lies by J.P. Pomare is definitely the best thriller I have read this year so far. Then I went on and read You Are Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen, and I will be doing a podcast episode of this book with a guest co-host from America this weekend, so you'll get a podcast episode coming from Books and Booze too. So You Are Not Alone follows Shay Miller, who's a 30-year-old that's kind of had a very boring, mundane life. She's lost her job, she's about to become homeless, she really hasn't been very lucky in love, and she doesn't really have many friends at all. She's quite lonely. So it's quite a one second. Sorry about that. Ordered Harry Potter Cluedo from Amazon, and that just arrived. So guess what we're doing tonight? Anyway, where was I? Shay Miller. Very boring existence until she witnesses a woman commit suicide by jumping in front of a train. And I must say, this was quite weird, having just finished J.P. Pomare's book Tell Me Lies, which also had a death by train. So it was like, whoa, a bit bizarre that I just two books like that, but there we go. So Shay becomes obsessed with this woman who committed suicide. She wants to find out everything about her, what made her jump, and it kind of leads her into attending her funeral, where she meets a whole bunch of this woman's friends. This woman that jumped, her name was Amanda. So the friendship circle that she meets, they've got everything that Shay doesn't, and it kind of seems like they are willing and actually want to help her out in life and make her life better. But is there like an ulterior motive to why they want to help her? Like, why would they? I've read both of Greer, Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen's other books, The Wife Between Us and An Anonymous Girl. The Wife Between Us to this day still remains my favourite. I feel like You Are Not Alone just had way too many subplots, and there are like 7 points of views throughout this book as well, which is just way too many to keep track of. It just got confusing, bogged down with information. It was a bit too much for me. It was also really long, so the audiobook for this is like 11 hours, and I feel like for a nice decent thriller, 8 or 9 hours is the perfect length. Any longer than that and it just gets a bit too tedious. And especially with a book like You Are Not Alone, it was just so choppy that 11 hours, it's hard to just keep up with everything that's going on in it. It's just too much. However, what I will say is that there definitely was an addictive aspect to this book. You know, I listened to the audiobook when I was out on my 5k morning runs, and this book made me want to lace up my running shoes and go for a run to figure out what was happening, and I needed to get to the bottom of it, because the whole way through you're like, I have no idea where this is going, it's very weird, but I need to find out. So it's a book about lies, deception, deceit, revenge, and they're all fantastic elements to a thriller novel. But I think the problem is that I just didn't find this book all that believable. So yeah, I think a generous 3.5 stars out of 5 is my rating for this one. The next book I finished in April, it's not really a full-length book, it's a little novella by Clare Mackintosh called The Donor. And let me tell you, this bite-sized book was so much fun. I loved it. I mean, I love Clare Mackintosh as an author. I've read pretty much everything she's written. I think my 2 favourites would be I let you go, and strangely enough, after the end, which is heartbreaking and brutal, but gorgeous. But now I have to say that The Donor is definitely up there on my favourites of her books too. Honestly, I don't actually know how Mackintosh did it. She managed to pack so much into a 2.5 hour audiobook. Like, so the book is about this mother called Lizzie. Her daughter Meg is recovering from a heart transplant, and they received this letter in the mail. So it's from the mother of the son who donated his heart to Meg for her to be able to survive. And the mother really wants to meet Meg. So everyone keeps telling them, like, you really shouldn't meet the family of donors. Everything will get very complicated, can get a bit dangerous. But Lizzie tells Meg that this woman's reached out, and Meg jumps at the chance to, she just really wants to thank the woman. She feels so grateful for having this second shot of life and to have her son's heart, and she just wants to say thank you. So they don't follow the advice of everyone around them, and they decide to meet this woman. Since Meg's surgery, her whole personality has been changing. Like, suddenly she likes coffee, which she never used to before. Her sleeping habits have changed. She's developed this strange liking for Western movies, and it turns out that these are all things that this woman's son really liked before he died. And they look into it, and it's all about like cell memory, and because cells were still in this guy's heart, it's kind of made bits of him go into her, and apparently it's a real thing, which I find absolutely fascinating. So Meg and this woman, this mother, her name's Karen, they start to develop quite a strong bond, which Lizzie isn't too comfortable with, but Karen seems to be slipping very easily into their lives and kind of getting in the way a little bit. And yeah, it's very unnerving and very realistic. I couldn't put it down for such a short book. I know it's easy to say that you'd fly through it so quickly, but honestly, I had to just carry on running until I finished the book. I was just like, oh my god, this is too good to put down. I loved the cliffhanger ending. It's just like, I need to know what happens next. I really actually hope that there is a follow-up book of this, because it's so good. Clare Mackintosh is a fantastic author, and I highly recommend her if you haven't read her before. So other than that, I have been slowly working my way through A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I'm over the halfway mark now. I think I'm on like 480 pages, so still a while to go, but really, really enjoying it. Yeah, it wasn't many books I read this month, really, was there? Hopefully May will be a better reading month. It is my birthday month, and sadly, it seems like I will be spending it in lockdown again. Not again, I haven't spent a birthday in lockdown before, obviously, but another month of lockdown, which is really starting to get to me. I don't do routine very well, and I'm a very free-spirited person who likes to kind of just disappear and do my own thing. And yeah, I mean, mine isn't as serious. I'm sure there's other people out there that are way more free-spirited than me that are really suffering right now, so when will this end? Anyway, let me know what you're doing during lockdown to keep busy, entertained, and still keeping happy, getting those endorphins flowing by going for a run, taking up knitting, crocheting, ukuleleing. That's what I've done. But I am very excited for Harry Potter Cluedo tonight. Super excited. Hopefully I don't get really sick, because my throat is feeling quite scratchy. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!